All right, welcome to the podcast. We're going to start where everyone else does. As far as earliest childhood memory, what are we getting into?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, we can
My
start that.
earliest childhood memories?
Yes, bringing it way back.
Uh, Probably my older brother beating me up. That's It was tough on me.
Yeah,
Uh, but that's I wasn't prepared for that one. That's a good question. I
yeah,
got to work on that. I really hadn't thought about that. I'm 72 years old, so it goes way back.
yeah.
But do you mind if I just tell you about myself?
Oh well, yeah. I think we'll get there through the stories. I had uh the president of the enhanced games on, and I asked him a question, and then he jumped ahead, and I was like, oh wait, let's figure out how you got to where you are. So as far as the earliest childhood memories, then we'll go either middle school or high school. What were you getting into? Did you enjoy schooling? Did you enjoy sports? What was that for you?
So I love animals.
Okay.
I didn't even realize. I don't know if the word nerd was passed around a lot. But in retrospect, I guess I was a pretty big nerd. Although you know, I loved women, so I used to like going on dates and stuff. But with that said, I used to collect all kinds of stuff. We had a basement. I lived in Brooklyn, New York. Now I live in California, where you can't have basements here because of earthquakes. But we
Yeah.
had a basement, and that was my domain. And I would have fish, and I don't want to upset your audience, but any insect, worms,
Yeah.
snails, I collected it all. And
Yeah.
so knew, I knew that my area that I was going to go into was biology, which I absolutely loved. And but there I was and so then eventually my mentor in high school, I got a scholarship, did some research, I had all kinds of stuff. But
So
he,
did you get introduced to the insects and all those things from a teacher originally, or did you just have this, oh, I really am interested in these things?
yeah, I'm just a nut. I would just walk outside, and my big fun would be turn a rock. Again, it had rained, and so it's a little muddy out there in my backyard, and I would turn a rock over, and there would be like an infinite number of bugs and slugs and all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff. And for whatever reason, I like that. Other people they're disgusted by these things, and even to this day, my kids and my wife would go, "Oh, there's a spider," and they know to come and get me because I'll capture it nicely and put it outside because I'm crazy with these things. But
Yeah.
I loved animals. I loved, the greatest joy was being taken to the Bronx Zoo,
Okay.
which was the major zoo out there in New York. And at any rate, but my mentor in high school convinced me that he said, you know what, your personality is you're better off with people.
Yeah.
And at the same time, my girlfriend in high school, her mother was saved by a chiropractor.
Okay.
And we were kind of hippies of the time and thought, you know, that it just fitted fit our style.
Yeah.
Becoming a chiropractor, it was rebellious enough. It was exactly what our parents probably, well, her parents didn't mind, but mine were not thrilled with the idea that I was not going to become a doctor because I was pre-med. But I started investigating the chiropractic profession. I would go door to my girlfriend and we would travel all over the country.
And this
And
was in high school?
no, this was now the same girlfriend.
Okay.
Started dating when I was 16, and we wound up being together for many years
Okay. Okay.
until we
So
weren't. But
in high school, were your parents ever pushing you in a direction? And
uh,
if so, how did they want to push you in a direction?
no, they didn't pressure me.
Yeah.
But I think they were expecting that I would do what other people would do. The family were professionals,
Okay.
whether it was a doctor or a lawyer. So that's what was kind of expected of me. So I was kind of a doctor, or I was kind of thinking about a doctor, but it was like an O doctor.
Yeah.
An O doctor is you tell somebody you're a chiropractor and they go, they ask you, well, what kind of doctor are you? And you go, chiropractor. You go, oh, um, not a real doctor. So, but at any rate, I got very excited about becoming a chiropractor. This was, predates uh, cell phones,
Yeah.
computers, any of that stuff. Because we're talking about started in 1972, looking into chiropractic, and I started school in 75 and graduated. And that included summers. You go 3.5 years, including summers.
What
And
was there a lot of chiropractic schools back then? Because I feel that chiropractics were relatively young at that point,
oh,
in the
it
US.
was ridiculously young.
Yeah.
Um, there was one school that I could go
Okay.
to. In fact, there I am in New York, and the school that was in New York, they had to tell me legally that, by the way, if you go to this school and you graduate, you can't practice in New York. What? What? Yeah, well, we're not recognized in every state. Okay, I wasn't interested in that. I thought I'd want to go back to New York, but at the time, the best school was in California. So we drove all the ways out to California and went to the Los Angeles College of Chiropractic, which was in Glendale, California.
Okay.
And I loved it. I mean, my girlfriend was looking in a different direction. She wasn't going to become a chiropractor. When she saw all the fun that I was having, she signed up the following year to get in school, and she's also a chiropractor.
So
At any rate, I love being a chiropractor. You were going to say
yeah, I was
something?
just say, what was the introduction? You mentioned that your girlfriend's mom was saved, and I feel that most people that either get into chiropractic, or are just like that they not necessarily swear by it, but they're accepting of chiropractic. There's usually like an aha moment, or there's something that changes their mind. What was it for you?
Um, we were exploring different possibilities. I was a molecular biologist. I was studying in all kinds of different things, and they were not exciting. Doing research is not exciting compared to, I knew I wanted to work with patients.
Gotcha.
And my girlfriend and I, we would go cross country with this little stupid red bug that I had. And every city we hit, remember, there's no cell phone. So you'd hit the city, you'd open up the phone book in the hotel, and you look up chiropractors and you call as many as you could in that city.
Okay.
And I never found a chiropractor that wasn't thrilled to be a chiropractor. And
Yeah.
that's so I said, you know what? I want to do that.
Wow, it's Yelp before Yelp. That's great.
Yeah. But I'll also tell you that I was, young and dumb, thinking, well, if we don't love it, we can just switch. It's not, as you get older, you realize it's not so easy to switch, but we loved it. We went to school, definitely enjoyed the whole process of being around healthy, naturally oriented people, natural health oriented people. And then I graduated in 78. I started pretty soon after that in my practice. Um, and I loved it. I mean, I was enjoying, again, as a hippie of sorts in the 1970s,
Yeah.
I was not money oriented. I don't mind making money, but even today, I love the idea of helping people. And that's what happened. So that was 47 years ago when I
So
started my practice.
I'll I've seen a lot of chiropractors, and it seems that a lot of chiropractors will go to the same school, but then when they leave and they open their own practice, they have a lot of different nuances or focuses. How does that happen? As opposed to like usually a doctor will just kind of go down a checklist. What's the differences, and why do people have such different I guess, basis for their practices?
Well, there are back then there were two kinds of chiropractic schools. One was called diversified,
Okay.
and the other was what they called straight. So a straight chiropractor back then, anyhow, and I'm not going to speak for what other people are doing, but the straight chiropractors I knew believed that only the spine. They didn't
Okay.
believe in anything else. And to me, that didn't seem right. I mean, I wanted to help people with their diet. I wanted to help people with exercise. I wanted to help people how to sit, stand, sleep, beds, pillows, chairs, car seat, shoes, everything.
Yeah.
And so I wanted everything pointed in the right direction for each patient to help them get better, but also to stay that way.
Hmm.
So we would what to call diversified. If I bring something into the practice, now the rules were really it had to be non-invasive and safe and healthy. And that's why 26 years ago, that 20 years in, about 20 years into my practice, I was introduced to red light therapy
Okay.
by a medical doctor of all. The medical profession has not taken to red light therapy, but the guy that brought it to the United States was a medical doctor. He was an orthopedic surgeon and professor out of USC out here in California. And he's the one that came to me. I knew him before light therapy, and he said, "Yeah, well, you shine a light on somebody and it's going to help." And I thought it was crazy.
Yeah.
Shine a light on somebody and it's going to help. I thought, oh, come on, give me a break. But he convinced me to try it in the practice, and within a relatively short period of time, and now that's with equipment that was thousands of times weaker than what we have currently.
Yeah.
But yet and still, it revolutionized my practice. I was able to help people with things I never believed. I mean, this lady said, "I have gum disease. Can you help me?" And I don't know. The only thing we knew for sure is we couldn't hurt somebody.
Right.
Imagine in the 50 years that they've been studying this technology, there has never been a recorded side effect.
Okay.
So can you imagine there's only an upside and no downside? Try it. The worst that'll happen is nothing. So I started using it. She had gum disease. We helped the gum disease. This guy had a kidney problem.
How do you measure the gum disease? It was just
You
uh
could see it
the
pinked up.
okay, the gums went back over where it was and
They were
everything.
black and
Okay.
gray, and they pinked up.
Yeah.
Um, there's not a square inch in your body that if I expose it to this glorious light therapy that we could not affect it in some pot, most likely affect it in a very positive way.
So and we'll get deeper later, but as far as layman terms, the body's very good at healing itself, and the red light is increasing the ability to do that, or
Yeah,
what?
I
Okay.
would think that that's a good terminology and a good way of looking at it. Look at a chiropractor's job, a natural healer's job is to remove whatever interference there is and then get the heck out of the way.
Right.
We know that there is such a thing called innate intelligence, and the body knows what it needs to do,
Okay.
but we need to get rid of the interference. So sometimes the interference is diet. Sometimes interference is a subluxation, meaning a bony misalignment, which is pinching on a nerve.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be, I mean, if somebody came to me, and I'm telling you now that red light therapy can be unbelievably helpful, but they have a dislocated shoulder, I could red light that person till I'm blue in the face, and they're blue in the face, and we're not going to make a big difference here until we fix the dislocation. So
Gotcha.
what we need to do is to correct the underlying problem to a degree, add red light therapy to the process. I mean, when I finish with you guys at the end of this, if you come along with me, you're going to realize that I'm crazy and that I am telling you that we have seen miracles. If you want to hear about miracles, we have seen miracles. I didn't have miracles for many years of my practice, but within the last 5 years, we've gone from very good, what we thought at the time was great, to now miracles. So let me
Yeah, yeah,
explain.
yeah. Well, I would say the gum disease one, that's pretty impressive to start with.
Yeah, that
So
wasn't bad.
so what's the protocol that you started with using? You said that now the light is the technology has improved so much. What were you using at the beginning compared to what it is now?
So we started off, the first device was what we call a cold laser or cold light.
Yep.
And the reason why it was called cold is it wasn't literally hot, but you wanted to have as much power as possible so that you could be under the radar. The body would not realize it was even being done, because if you have heat on it, it will bring more blood to the surface and that will block the penetration of light.
Okay.
So you want what we call cold therapy. That's what has been the difference between something 26 something years ago and today. Is it's the same thing: strength without heat, strength without dilating blood vessels and bringing more blood to the surface. And that has been the factor that has we've been, with the world of technology, we've been able to get stronger and stronger. I can tell you that the device that we used 26 something years ago, the entire device, the entire system was 90 milliwatts. Anything much more than that would generate heat. 90 milliwatts. Now, with the device that we have, which is a full body bed, and I'll go into why that's important also,
Yeah.
but just one of the 5,000 diodes that's in the bed is 3,000 milliwatts. So the whole system 26 years ago was 90 milliwatts. One of the diodes that we use now is up to 3,000 milliwatts, and there's 5,000 of those.
And how do you is the goal just more milliwatts without heat? How do you know whether there's a top end where it becomes a negative? Like where's what's the thoughts on that?
Well, so far, I can tell you that the more power and less heat, that has been always our deciding, and that's the way that technology has gone.
Okay.
Listen, I said in 50 years of this technology being studied, there's never been a recorded side effect. So we couldn't hurt somebody if we tried. Someone says, well, a dose in our bed is 12 minutes. And someone says, well, what if I want to stay longer? I said, well, you can. You're just wasting time and money, but 12 minutes is a dose.
Okay.
And so some people need more than one dose in a day. So we'll do
Yeah.
two a day, but we'll do a dose, and then later in the day, we'll do another one. But just getting back to the history, we started off with something, the whole device was 90 milliwatts. So that meant that we had some success. It was a round, laser, looked a little bit fancier than a flashlight.
Yeah.
And remember that the light that I was using, well, not remember, but I'm going to tell you that the light that I used was near infrared only,
Yeah.
because we know that near infrared is more healing than any other wavelength range out there. And so the device wouldn't light up. See, near infrared is invisible to the naked eye.
Yeah.
So they had to have a indicator light that would tell you that it was even on. And then they would also have a beep sound so you knew it was on. Otherwise, it would just, if you didn't have the sound and you didn't have the indicator light, you wouldn't even know it was on.
Okay.
So we used that, and that was near infrared. Around the same time, another company came out with a device that was red only.
Okay.
I didn't want to hurt their feelings and tell them that they were making a mistake, but their marketing was much better than the company I was working with. So they developed and really was able to send out and get out a lot of their red light only devices, but we were having much better success. However, about 13 years ago, it was discovered by that company that did only red light, that it was red light that could actually help with fat loss. And I'll go, oh, wait a minute, I'm healing all kinds of different things with more and more power. That device I had 26 years ago, we then came out with that was a class 1 device, came out with a class 2 device, class 3, and ultimately the class 4, which
Okay.
is the strongest possible.
Is that medical grade or what? How do you
That's
define
medical grade.
classes? Okay.
Yeah. So with the class 4, had a lot of restrictions on it. And if you
Gotcha.
change the head, you could be doing surgery.
Okay.
So it was touch and go with some people being concerned about using class 4s. But by the time the class 4 came out, I was moving on to something else already, because 13 years ago, it was discovered that red light could actually shrink fat cells. And I went, whoa, well, now, if you watch television at all, you'll see many commercials throughout the day about an injection that you can get that could actually help you with fat loss. And it's unbelievably popular. In this country, losing weight is critical. People love it. And in the marketing world, if you put in there that I can save you from any problem in the world, and on the other hand, I can help you with your weight loss, this thing's going to bring in a lot more people than almost anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So when I heard that I can use red light to shrink fat cells, but not damage them in any way. So we're not freezing them. We're not boiling them. We're not lasering them. We're not yanking them out. We're not putting anything there to destroy them. We're not using radio frequency or ultrasonic cavitation to destroy them. We are just changing the fat cell wall temporarily and allowing the fat contents to leak out. And then that's not all of them, but some of the fat contents to leak out. And then we move that fat away from the fat cells and eventually to the liver via the lymphatic system for use or elimination. So it's wonderful. I mean, imagine I can do a very healthy manner and help people with fat loss that would not hurt them in any way.
So
It has to be paired with a smart diet. I can't have somebody go home and get drunk and overeat every night. But if they go on a calorically neutral diet and stay away from the four things that really get in the way of weight loss, which is starchy carbohydrates, simple sugars, sodas, and alcohol. If you can eliminate or at least lessen dramatically those four things and pair that with a calorically neutral diet and red light therapy, we have very great results with that.
So as far as the fat loss goes, what I'm hearing is because I never know. Usually, when people put on a bunch of weight, usually quickly the fat cells expand, but then when you lose that fat, that's why you'll get the loose skin because the fat cells have already been kind of expanded like a balloon. It won't.
It's not the fat cells that are causing that. It's actually the skin that's causing that. And with our device, we pair our device is integrated with red, which is for fat loss and some healing, and the near infrared, which is what tightens the skin. There's no sagging skin or stretch marks when you combine red light and near infrared together.
Right. So, but as far as like the mechanism goes, with fat loss, is that saying that just what I've been taught is if you're at a calorie deficit, then you're going to be burning fat. So, what's the workaround if it's a calorie neutral diet?
Red light.
So the red light is causing calorie expenditure then?
No,
So how does
I'm going to tell you, you
yeah.
got to pay attention. So what it does is it changes the permeability of the fat cell wall, makes the fat cell wall more porous, and allows the fat contents to leak out. And then with our unique protocol, we move the fat away from the fat cells, eventually to the liver for use or elimination. It's
But
not
that
about caloric expenditure. It's not about, increasing anything. I mean, I don't mind people using some kind of herbs and stuff like that to reduce their appetite or to increase their metabolic rate. But you don't need that. I mean, it's fine. And people don't realize that some of those things do have side effects. But if we're just allowing the fat contents to be leaked out of the body and eventually move to the liver, we have very good results with that. Very clean and wonderful results with that. I'm telling you, there's not a lot of people that know as much about weight loss as I do.
well
I
I
started when I was a very young kid, and my mother was an executive of Weight Watchers. I studied the heck out of it. I hated it. Where we never had a good thing to eat again once that happened, where spaghetti turned into bean sprouts. But with that said, I knew that with my patients, if I can get them to lose the fat that's screwing up their spine, then it's amazing how long an adjustment and a treatment will last much longer if they're trim versus if they're overweight. So I've
right.
always wanted to help people with diet, but it's not so easy. Some people are obsessed with eating, and some people have all kinds of other issues that get in the way, like hormonal problems or other chemicals that they're taking, whether it's drugs or whatever that's getting in the way. And so now with red light combined with a caloric, the reason why I like a calorically neutral diet is that the person's not starving and they can hold this kind of diet for the rest of their lives. Going on a diet is actually a mistake because the day you go off the diet, you got about 6 months before you put all the weight back on. But if you change lifestyle and start incorporating smart eating for the rest of your life, that's a much better way of doing it. It's a much healthier way of doing it. And adding red light to the mix, which is also very healthy, is a great combination.
So how do you measure? I'm just going to hammer the mechanism question because I'm very interested in it. Uh, when you're, let's say we're not using red light and you're eating at a calorically neutral diet and uh the process of losing fat, like you can still transition to burning fat from those cells in general and just the process how it goes throughout your body. It would just be if you're eating more protein and you're working out, you're going to be getting muscle and you can burn fat and kind of stay the same there. So I'm just interested about the difference of uh like how do you know the permeability of the fat cell? Like how do you I guess study that?
So 13 years ago, when they first saw that red light helped with fat loss, they didn't know why it worked. In fact, they
Okay.
were coming out with the idea that it liquefied the fat, which was turned out to not be true. And over the years of research, they realized it was just a change of the fat cell wall becoming more porous. I'm not an expert on that and beyond that because I didn't do the research. I
Yeah,
just use the research. A lot of times, as a researcher that I've been, I don't have to do all the research to be able
absolutely.
to use the research. But I'd like to ask you a favor.
Yeah, yeah.
Weight loss is not it's a really great topic,
Yeah.
but it's the healing stuff that I'd really like to talk to you about because that's the miracles. That's where the miracles come in.
Yeah.
That's when I usually do a lecture. I started off somewhere early on with asking everybody in the audience to pretend if it's not true, at least pretend that you're a healer,
Yeah.
that you're a practitioner. And I'm going to call you up, or somebody calls you up and they say, listen, I'm having a heart attack once a week. And
Mm.
this has been going on for at least 12 or 13 years. And 13 years ago, they had implanted a defibrillator into this guy's chest. So every time he died, it would zap him back to life. And he's desperate. 13 years later, now that we're seeing him, he's dying. His heart is suffering. His every organ and gland, because the circulation is so poor, is suffering. He has erectile dysfunction. He can't walk around the block practically, and he used to be an athlete. So you, as a health practitioner, what would you do for that person?
Uh just run as many tests as I can and figure out what's wrong.
No, that's all. This has already been done. We know
Gotcha.
that his heart sucks.
Okay.
We know that most likely we should have, but I'm talking about treatment wise,
Yeah.
diagnosis wise. Let's forget about that for now. He has congestive heart failure. His heart is suffering. His swelling in all the organ, in his entire body, because his blood is not circulation not happening
Yeah.
properly. The point is that we didn't have an answer for that. What
Mm.
would you do for someone like that? No one had an answer for that. He was on the drugs, but he was steadily, progressively getting worse. And so he calls up a practitioner of ours. We have hundreds of facilities all over the country. And he said to this guy that he'd like to come in for a treatment. So that practitioner calls me up and says, I'm not sure I should treat him. I mean, he's having heart attacks. I don't want him having a heart attack in my office. I said, let's just treat him for 5 minutes and stay in the room the whole time.
Yeah.
And that patient went home that night after that 5 minute treatment. And that was almost 2 years ago. Hasn't had a heart attack since. Now he's had more treatment,
Yeah.
no more heart attacks, and everything has come back to life. Everything, including his erectile dysfunction, including his energy, as he says, as he puts it. And I'm going to be sending you these videos that I'd love for you to share with your audience
Yeah.
of all these different people talking about the variety of different stuff. I like starting off with this one because truly I had no answer for that. None of us did until we got involved with red light full body beds. Until that point, doing red light therapy for all those years, using a laser, using pads, using panels, we never had an answer like we do now. And the answer is full body beds. Now, the full body bed came because of COVID.
Okay.
So 13 years ago, when we learned that fat loss could be assisted with, red light could help with fat loss, that's when I got involved with manufacturing, about 13, 14 years ago, give or take. And then about whatever years ago, when COVID first hit, our practitioners called us up and said, we need less physical contact between the patient and the provider. What do you suggest? And we came up with a bed. Because with the bed, you don't need staff. The patient can get in and out of the bed themselves.
Yeah.
And we just thought it would be a nice substitute for what we were doing up to that point. But within a month of us having delivered the first series of beds that we generated, the results were incredible. All of a sudden, we were hearing from people that had all kinds of issues that we never thought we could help. So if you could think of any condition, including multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, any autoimmune disease, including rheumatoid arthritis, we've heard it. We've heard people reporting back of phenomenal results. And in fact, I'm going to teach everybody here how to do the research themselves because it's all on Google Scholar.
So when you say you got into manufacturing, does a company reach out to you? Do you reach out to somebody else? How do you go through that process?
How did I get involved with manufacturing?
Yeah, you said you got involved with manufacturing and then you came up with the
I just, being in practice as long as I had a lot of connections.
okay,
And we started working with a company that, with my direction, we developed the first series of pads that we
okay,
would put around the person's body. But the exciting part is that we moved over to this bed.
yeah,
And what we've learned is that when you bathe the entire body at the same time, that's when you get these miracle changes. So yeah, we use lasers and pads and all that. We never got these kind of results. When you bathe the whole body, front and back, top and bottom, left and right, and inside and out, when you cover as many cells as possible, that's when you get these miraculous changes.
yeah,
If you can think of anything, starting with your hand and start with the top of the head and talk about the brain. So the lights can penetrate the skull and get to the brain.
yeah,
So we have a whole bunch of people who their mental and emotional well-being has improved dramatically. I have a letter that this lady sent me, an email. She said, if this is how normal people feel every day, I can't believe I've been missing out all this time.
yeah,
She was so highly depressed. She was a mess. And now she's not. And
hmm
we're hearing that time and time. I can't get these people are shy, embarrassed, I think, about telling me that they were suicidal. So I can't get the testimonials from them. But if you go again to Google Scholar, so it's scholar.google.com, and I'm going to
yeah,
send you show notes, and you can send those out to people. But if you go to Google Scholar, you're going to put in the phrase red light therapy.
yeah,
And I don't know if this would surprise you, but they would see over 3.5 million entries, three
mm,
and a half million double blind studies, articles, research papers, all kinds of stuff, PubMed. Um, and so they don't have to believe me. Put
yeah.
in the word red light, the phrase red light therapy, and then mental issues.
So so I have a Max upstairs, not the biggest one, not the smallest one, but the like a medium size. And you would say that's a decent product, but where everyone should be leaning towards is the bed.
But I guess it depends on what they want.
Got it.
Um, we call the bed the fountain of youth. Look, when we came out with the bed, now they're all over the place because as people started realizing, holy mackerel, this thing is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so we always are working very hard to stay ahead of the game, having the best lights, the best equipment. But the truth of the matter is, if you're using any smaller devices, they're fine. There's masks and there's helmets, and there are things for this and that and face whatever. I'm not saying they're not okay, but if you want the miracle, if
Yeah.
you want the full body experience, which is going to help you in ways that you can't believe, I'm telling you, everybody in your audience needs to just try this 6 times.
Okay.
It's 3 times a week for 2 weeks. That's 6 visits. And at the end of the sixth visit, the more difficult issue they have, the more horrific their condition is, or tragic their condition is, typically the more unbelievable the results are,
Yeah.
the stronger the results are. So if someone gets in the bed and they're great, they have no issue, I don't know if they're going to see a difference. They probably will.
Yeah.
But if they're a mess, messy people are the best for us because after 6 visits, they're going to see a change. It might take a lot more visits. I don't know.
Yeah.
But after 6 visits, almost everybody is going to notice a big change. That guy with the heart issue, he saw it after 1 visit.
Hmm.
Durisha, who had a stroke, she saw it after 1 visit. After 8 visits, she was better than she was before she ever had the stroke.
Yeah. And so the idea behind it, once again, layman's terms, would be it's able to just help the body heal itself at an accelerated rate. Is that what we're looking
So
at?
this is a good segue
Okay.
to how does this work? We talked about how fat loss works,
Yeah.
a completely different mechanism. So let's talk about this other mechanism, which is, for lack of a better term, healing, the
Yep.
healing mechanism. Again, 50 years ago, they didn't know how it worked. They weren't sure. But just like almost everything else, if they can prove that there's no side effects, why not try it? And that's what all of us did. Um, but more recently, they've learned how it works. And what it's all about is sunlight.
Mm.
Now, you know, the sun, for hundreds of years, people have been told, go out, sit in the sun. Not talking about UV light here. I'm not talking about blue light here. Now, remember, the sun has the full array of the entire rainbow of light. But we're talking about not the blue light, which can screw up the circadian rhythm, but the incredible red and even more incredible near infrared. So first, I'd just like to talk about the word infrared. You've heard of infrared saunas, infrared tables, infrared pads. That's far infrared. Right? By default, when people say just the word infrared, they're really talking about far infrared. And far infrared is just a really great way of having deep penetrating heat and nothing else.
Yeah.
It's the glorious near infrared. I know I sound crazy here, but I can't help it. It's like near infrared is where that range of wavelengths in the near infrared category is where the miracles come from. So our bed, as I said, we combine the red, which has nice healing qualities, but also with fat loss, and the near infrared, which is the miracle part of the whole thing. So they know it's about sun, and what they learned is that the sun can stimulate different receptors in the body. Just like you can look outside and look at trees and plants and know that the sun affects plants, guess what? To a different degree, in a different way, it affects us as well.
Mm.
So you and I, well, the whole planet would be dead if it wasn't for the fact that we had photosynthesis and we could have plants to help us.
Yep.
But also we'd be dead because we need sunlight as well. What we learned is that when you magnify that sunlight, these wavelengths of red and near infrared, many thousands of times and drive it into the person's body, that's when you're going to get these amazing results, also covering the whole body as best as possible. Again, let's talk about why that they found out it worked. Again, the body has what they call photoreceptors in the body. And the other word I want to bring up is the word mitochondria. Now, we know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the body. It's the reason why you breathe oxygen and eat food. It creates the energy currency that your body can use throughout the body for all your activities, including your movements, but maybe most importantly is also the healing. So without that molecule called ATP, which is what the mitochondria produces, the energy currency of the body, without that, or with the lessening of that, it will eventually lead to disease and death. So we can reverse that nicely by helping people by driving this beautiful energy into the body. And wouldn't you know that in the mitochondria, well, first, let me tell you how prevalent the mitochondria is. When I went to school, we were taught there was one mitochondria in every cell of the body.
Okay.
Not true. Absolutely
Really?
not true. There's actually thousands of mitochondria in many of the cells of the body. And so the mitochondria is so prevalent that it actually makes up, listen to this, 10% of the body weight, of your body weight.
Interesting.
They didn't know that before. So now what they've learned is there's this thing called mitochondrial dysfunction, where the mitochondria is not doing its full job.
Yeah.
And so, and that comes, it's assumed it's going to come with aging, but it's also going to come with people who are not taking care of themselves. So obviously smoking and drinking can stimulate or deactivate perhaps the mitochondria. But wouldn't you know that hidden in the wall of the mitochondria is this enzyme called cytochrome C oxidase.
Okay.
It's a photoreceptor, and it's stimulated by certain wavelengths of light, including, most importantly, the red and near infrared. And that's the reason why this thing works. We're stimulating the cytochrome C oxidase to bring the mitochondria back to life. And so we're taking somebody who's got low energy, low healing capabilities, poor immune system, and bringing them back. So talking about immune system, let's talk about COVID for a second. The people who've had long COVID or post-jab reaction, they use the bed and see spectacular, unbelievable results.
Yeah.
And we have Jessica, who I called her up because she was telling me how red light has absolutely changed her life, but I wasn't clear on what she was talking about. And I realized after talking to her a while, and that's one of the videos I'll be sending you, she had 16 very serious conditions, including Lyme disease, shingles. She had 20 years of only diarrhea. She had 3 forms of psoriasis, heart condition, kidney, all kinds of stuff, kidney stones, everything.
Yeah.
And now she doesn't. She would go to the doctor all the time. And she had uveitis, which means it was like a precursor to glaucoma. So her eye was pressure in one eye was 180 when it's normally around 10.
Okay,
And so
so is she wearing goggles or no goggles in the bed?
I love that. So thank you for asking that
Yep.
question. I have so much to talk about that I want to make sure you keep me on track. So when a person gets in the bed, if they wear the goggles, they won't have this miraculous energy getting in their eye.
Okay.
So you might think to yourself, well, isn't that dangerous? It's a light. If you can turn on the lights to the room and get in the room, which everyone can, you
Yeah.
can get in the bed.
Okay.
Let's get back to the goggles.
Yep.
If you wear the goggles, you're not going to get this miraculous stuff getting into your eye. I told you that the light can get through the brain, through the skull and get to the brain. You know it can get through the eyelid. And now things happening in the eye are incredible. Again, you go to Google Scholar and you learn about this. But for example, floaters, I'll start off easy.
Yep.
Within 2 weeks, most people are reporting their floaters are gone
Hmm.
within 2 weeks. Again, by default, the treatment is 12 minutes a dose and it's 3 times a week. That's the typical. So, no, we don't recommend goggles, but we just tell people keep your eyes closed.
Hmm.
So, someone else may say, well, is it dangerous to open your eye? Not really, but it's a very strong light. And so, if you had a flashlight in front of your eye, would you really want to stare at that thing? Just keep your eyes closed. And she had the uveitis, the pressure in her eye was 180, as I said. And after a relatively short time, I said, well, how's it now? She said, it's normal.
Hmm.
So the treatment for her uveitis was an injection in her eye.
Okay.
And in the video, when you watch it, I ask her, well, what was that like? And she go, oh, it was horrific
Yeah.
or horrible, whatever word she used. And plus that's built insurance at $5,000 per injection.
Wonderful.
And the drops that she was taking uh, daily were her copay was $400 a month.
Perfect.
So she doesn't need any of that stuff anymore. This is not about not
So,
doing drugs and surgery. It's about using natural healing first
okay.
and not necessarily going straight to surgery or straight to that's what a natural heal is about.
So someone walks in, they say, "Hey, I have all these problems. Do you do a background history, see what all the
Sure.
issues are? You have adjustments, go over meal plans, and then you jump into the bed, or what's the process to getting there?"
I just want to make sure that I've completed the notion of how this works. So
Yeah.
just to finish, mitochondria, thousands and many cells of your body, so much so that it's 10% of your body weight, are stimulated by certain elements of sunlight, especially near infrared, which stimulates the cytochrome C oxidase that stimulates the mitochondria to come back to well-being and health.
Yeah.
So as a chiropractor, our job is to remove the interference, increase the likelihood of well-being, and
Yep.
then get out of the way. That's our job. Now you asked the question of the clinical aspect as opposed to how it works. So
Yeah.
clinically, person comes to the office, a typical facility. They fill out a form. I'm not in practice, so I'm just telling you how we train people. They would fill out a form so we would know the issues that are at hand. But one of the most important things in a chiropractor's office, and in this case, a red light therapist's office, is are they in the right place? Is that patient in the right place? So you want to get really good at diagnosing whether the issues are something that you can help. Or is this person about to have, like we had a person out in our waiting room many, many years ago. And my staff, we didn't run a mill, so we didn't just have everybody come in and do it. So my staff noticed that we had somebody out in the waiting room that was struggling.
Yeah.
I go out there and it's clear that this person doesn't realize that they're having a heart attack.
Oh no.
So you want to be able to do differential diagnosis is what it's called. Making sure that that person's in the right place. Are they about to blow a kidney? Are they about to have their appendix blow? Are they whatever? So, but that's a very, vast minority of people, but it's still smart
Yeah.
to make sure you have the person in the right place. Once you have an idea that this is not life and death right now and that we don't have to dial 911, then yeah, one of the first things we're going to do early on is get them in the bed. So we don't need a lot of other stuff. And we instruct them how to get in the bed, how to get out of the bed. So after the first visit, they're doing that themselves. They get in
Okay.
the bed, they get out of the bed. Someone goes in, one of your staff members goes in and wipes down the bed. That's it.
So
It's as
it,
simple as can
so
be.
the office, is it still a chiropractor's office or it's just a red light therapy office?
Any natural healer, any
Okay.
acupuncturist, chiropractor, any fitness center, any med spa, day spa, anyone in the mental health industry. It's so vast. Remember, what are we affecting? Every cell in the body.
Mm,
So if you can affect every cell, yeah, I sound nuts. Yeah, it sounds like snake oil. But the truth of the matter is we're affecting conceivably every cell in the body to
yeah.
bring it back to life. So some people will call our bed the fountain of youth.
Yeah.
I told you I'm 72 years old. I'm doing pretty well. And the bed has something to do with that. Not
Yeah.
everything. I
Right.
don't smoke. I don't drink. I exercise and I take decent care of myself. I don't put anything in my body.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll be at a party and maybe I'll have a piece of cake, but I try
Woo!
not to hurt myself.
So I think we've hammered the red light pretty well and how it works pretty well. I think it'll be interesting to learn a little bit more about you and like you said, you treat yourself so well. When you started using the red light, even though you are a very healthy person, did you see any changes right away, or what were you looking for?
Can I just tell people three things and then I'll answer
Go
that.
for it.
One, I'd like for them to go to the website,
Yep.
trifectalight.com. And at that website, what they're going to see is a lot of great information. But also, if they're interested, I'm suggesting that everybody that has an issue try the bed out. So there's a button to click that says find me an office closest to me, and one of my staff members will find the closest office to them.
Yeah.
On the other side, it's on the contact us page. So you go to trifectalight.com, go to the contact us page. On the left side, I believe it's find an office. On the right side is buy a bed. Now, why would somebody want to buy a bed? One, if they're wealthy but not healthy, and I don't mean wealthy, but if they have more money than health,
Yeah.
they should get a bed for their home. But those people that don't have that kind of money, like, which is fine, we'll find that location for them. Or if they want to use it in business, it's a great magnet to bring many more people to your facility. I just talked to this lady. She's too far away. She's been going to this office and she called me up and says, it's all day trip. I got to take 2 hours to get there, 2 hours back. So she decided she wanted to buy the bed. But she said, by the way, I just referred 18 people to that facility because
Yeah.
that's what happens. It explodes. What chiropractors learn early on in their career is that it's not satisfied patients that refer, it's excited patients. And
Yeah.
you're going to get more excited people from this. So just let me finish.
Yep.
Website, book. I don't make a penny off of this, but if you want to learn more about the whole process of red light therapy and be somewhat of an expert, it's a really good read. I
Yeah.
wrote it, but my editor really cleaned it up, kind of cleaned off the edges and made it really read very nicely.
Yeah.
But you can get it in Audible form where you can listen to me for 8 something hours. You can get it as a book or you can get it as a Kindle where you actually can read it off of the computer. Also, I'm going to highly recommend that you check out our YouTube channel. And that's, you go to YouTube and you put in the word Trifecta Light Official. And there's over 100 fantastic videos. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if they're all fantastic, but some of them are really, really good.
Had to
So
qualify that.
I recommend I just wanted to talk about those three things.
Yeah.
Now, you asked me a question about What was the question again about myself? Oh,
Well,
about
I'll ask two questions. Is it because the only other red light bet I've seen was Gary Brecka's, and I think that was like 118,000. Is this around that ballpark, or is
it's
that
about half that price.
oh, wonderful, wonderful. So yeah, the question was for you being so healthy, what were you seeing out of the bed, or what was your process of getting in the bed for the first couple of times?
Like I said, the worse off you are, the more dramatic the change will
Yeah,
be. And I'm not worse off. Um, I never drink. I've never smoked. You know, whether you like Trump or not, he's the first guy in a high end position that brags about the fact that he never drank.
yeah,
And you don't hear that often. If you watch any high end movies, James Bond, whatever, they all drink.
yeah,
Drinking's all over the place. And so I feel, I actually have to make silly excuses when I go to a party. They go, "You want to drink?" I said, "No." If I just say I don't drink, they're going to think there's something wrong with me. So what I have to sometimes do, and sometimes white lies, not such a terrible thing. I tell them, I have a problem with drinking, so I have to stay away from it. But I don't. But people are so into drinking,
yeah,
and it's like because you can't smoke on television anymore. They're all drinking.
yeah,
Everyone's drinking, and so if I don't drink and I don't smoke, so when I use the bed, it's more what I teach my patients. I'm not in practice now. What I taught them was it's health and well-being is like a candle that burns really bright from the beginning all the way to the end, and then sputters out and dies.
yeah,
And in order to have that, you need to take care of yourself. And I will tell you that there are patients that came to my office that I wouldn't say it out loud, but I would say, "Thank you, God, and please, God, don't let me wind up like that." I don't want to wind up like that because they don't take care of themselves. And so you're burning really bright all the way from the beginning to the end. If that's not happening in the last 20 years of your life, you're not able to function hardly at all. You can't think right. Your clarity's gone. You can't ambulate. You can't get around because you can't drive. You can't walk sometimes. I don't want that. I want to have the same thing that happened to my dad. So my dad was just like that candle. He never
yeah,
really had a major ailment. He was 99 years old and died of old age. That last 6 months, we saw him decline. His ideas and thinking were kind of whatever, and then he died.
yeah,
Um, I'm not talking about how long you live. I'm talking about how well you live. It's really about the quality of life.
absolutely.
So to see a difference on the bed, I'm using it more as a preventative thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have more energy and probably better. I mean, my skin looks pretty good because I don't. But smoking and drinking don't help your skin either.
yeah,
And I stay away as best I can from starchy carbohydrates and simple sugars. I don't eat fried foods. I mean, I don't want to think everyone. I don't want everyone to think I'm nuts. But I had, if you want to, the reason why some people don't take care of themselves is because they're not scared enough. And I got scared very early on from my patients who didn't take care of themselves. And they
right.
were older than me at the time. I started when I was 27 years old as a chiropractor. And I'm seeing 60, 70-year-old people who were a mess. They had to be wheeled in. They could barely function. I didn't want that.
Yeah,
And so that got me scared. But also, I volunteered at a senior living center when I was in college. That scared the heck out of me.
yeah.
So
Well,
get scared. If
I
you're not scared, go get scared.
well, I think you're definitely hammering on a really good point right there. There needs to be a certain type of urgency or motivation. There is a book that I think BJ Fogg wrote, and it's depending on the task, or depending on the task, how much skill or motivation that they really need to line up to get that thing done. And I think most people, even if the task is relatively easy, they don't have the motivation because they're not scared enough. They're like, oh, it's not going to be that bad. And I think we are in a society that, to our own fault, it's super easy. It's where every day we're not out in the fields. We don't really go through real struggle. So it 5, 10 years later, it's like, oh, this might be an issue and I don't really know how to fight through. So I think definitely getting scared is very helpful in that situation.
And another thing, as people get old, they'll all tell you they're going to wind up with arthritis. And I'm telling you, with the bed, what we're noticing that doesn't happen as much.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I'm as limber as I was when I was much younger.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm a 72-year-old. I know that I'm older. So I don't go. I mean, I remember as a kid, I used to fly down the stairs. I don't fly down the stairs. You know why I don't fly? Mostly because I've seen people who get injured, and recovery when you're 72 years old does definitely going to take longer than I
Right.
was younger. I know using the bed would be help, but it'd be smart if I don't hurt myself on top of everything else. I think that incorporating smart eating, smart exercise, not a, if you put some, I get somebody that's starts saying, I'm going to take care of myself. So now they're exercising every day. They're eating ridiculously well. And after 3 weeks, they go, I can't maintain this. And they quit altogether.
Yeah.
So don't do it like that. Just add some things and see how you can incorporate it into your life, because you're looking at a lifetime. We said it's about being not scared enough, but it's also people talking about, I'm living for the today and I don't care about the future. You're not living for today. You are living for the future, because everything you're doing today, not everything, but many of the things that you're doing today are going to mess you up later on. So imagine, what is your 70 or 80-year-old self going to
Yeah.
say to you now? Right now, your 80-year-old self, because you're 30, and the 80-year-old self looking at you going, please do better. Please take better care of yourself. I
Yeah.
don't want to be slobbering on myself. I don't want to, that I can't eat. I can't take care of myself. I don't want that. And so, anyhow, I
Well,
tried. Listen,
yeah.
when I started in practice, I tried to help as many people as I could. You know what my goal was? And this was in 1978, to have people take less drugs.
Yeah.
And I failed miserably.
Really?
There's never been more drug taking than ever. Come on, you know that they're advertising, they're not even advertising to the person for the over the counter stuff. They're advertising for the people to tell their doctor, who's what, not smart enough to figure out what drug you need, to tell your doctor what drug you need.
Yeah.
Don't give me the blue one. I want the purple one, because we know that's better based on that commercial. And so the drug industry is just brilliant, and they're changing the culture. They have changed the culture.
Yeah.
And the food industry has changed the culture. And RFK Jr. has a big task in front of him. If he's successful, he'll be able to do something, but what he's going up against is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Food industry and the drug industry are unbelievably powerful, and getting us to eat better. When I have a patient that was from Europe, and she said she ate exactly the way she did when she was in Europe, and she put on 30 pounds.
Yeah.
And that's because the meat that she was eating, she didn't realize it, was full of hormones,
Hmm.
amongst other things, but that was part of it.
Yeah.
So she, of course, went to much more expensive meat that is pesticide free, drug free, grass fed, and all that stuff. Um, it's very difficult in this country. In Japan, I have patients that are Japanese. I have practitioners Japanese, and they tell me that nobody, or practically nobody in Japan, suffers from obesity. They don't have it in Japan.
They also don't work out a lot there either. They don't have a lot of well,
I didn't know that.
they don't have a lot of franchise gyms. So like I have some people that travel a lot. They don't have like a bunch of CrossFit gyms. Like they're not uh workout fiends in the way of like, oh, I'm gonna work out to be healthy. They just live generally healthy lives for those 24 hours, as opposed to here, you are healthy for an hour 15, and you expect that to be the fix for the day. And I think if you look at a lot of different places, um, the lifestyle is healthy as opposed to just like, oh, I'm just gonna
Right.
go hit the gym.
Right. It's a cultural thing,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah,
But we're so influenced by television, and you know, at any rate, listen, I'm hoping that some of you will get it,
Yeah.
that I would suggest you incorporate red light therapy in your world. I promise you that this is called the fountain of youth, this bed, and I love it.
So,
And I don't know if I showed you this.
yeah.
Do you see that?
Oh, I like that.
It says get in the bed. And that was a mug made by one of my staff members because that's my attitude. It doesn't say shut up and get in the bed, but I'm almost thinking like that because I'm overwhelmed by this stuff. And
So,
I'm overwhelmed by the kind of feedback I get from Steve that had 40 years of Lyme disease.
yeah.
He hated his life. His life was miserable. And after just one treatment, it changed his life. So
Yeah.
that's another video I want people to listen to and watch, the Steve video. And there's just tons. And then the last thing I want to talk about is athletes real quick.
Yeah.
If you're an athlete, a serious athlete, and you're not getting in this bed, you're making a mistake.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, that's why NBA has our bed. Olympic Training Center has our bed. The major facilities throughout the country have our bed because an athlete gets in the bed early in the day, and now their performance and their activity that day is much easier, and their stamina is more. They're able to jump higher, run faster, and then they get in the bed again after the activity, so they recover. It's called performance and recovery, and the results are spectacular.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody's injured and they're not getting in the bed, they're making a mistake. Get in the bed.
Is that why LeBron's doing so well? He's been getting in the bed.
He is using red light therapy.
Yeah.
I wish I could tell you that the Lakers have our bed. They don't. But there are other teams that do.
So how did you switch over from practice to making the decision? Are you going out contacting these places or what's your goals at the moment?
Well, 7 years ago, I was just overwhelmed with all the work I was doing with red light therapy in general. I couldn't do a good job for my patients. So I
Okay.
was just too, so I sold my practice to one of my associate doctors. And then all I do is I do a lot of podcasts, a lot of
Yeah.
education. I do this week, I'm going to be going to Dallas for a talk and actually a lecture. I can't stop talking about it. I don't know. I love it. You know, I go to an event and my wife says, could you just not talk about red light therapy this one time? Okay, honey, I'll try. And then this guy next to me, a couple of seats over, is obviously in bad shape.
Yeah.
He can barely move. His back's killing him. You can see he's not doing well. What am I supposed to do? I'm going to just say, suffer. I can't do that. So I did talk about red light therapy, and she gave me a dirty look, but she also understood that spreading the word for such a good cause makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, we'll finish up with the last two questions that everybody gets. What's your definition of health? Not necessarily the dictionary definition, but what is health to you?
Health is having as much energy as you need, waking up in the morning, looking forward to the day. Um, I used to have a great definition for this, and so it's not just the absence of pain. It's not just the absence of symptoms. It's much more than that. And so, as a chiropractor, we always worked for not just the symptoms, but looking for the cause of the problem and then helping that person tremendously with that.
Yeah.
And red light therapy has helped with that tremendously.
Love that. And then what's something from your life that you think people listening to the podcast would be able to take away as a positive?
Besides red light therapy,
Could be red light therapy.
I mean, as you can tell, I'm nuts about red light therapy.
So I've
So
heard.
my suggestion is try it for 6 visits, and I would be very surprised. I don't care what you have, whether, I mean, we have a guy with multiple sclerosis, and multiple sclerosis is like a cavity that eats away at the tissue. And what we did with him is we halted the progression.
Yeah.
No one's ever seen that before. So when he went a year later to the neurologist and they did the MRI, the guy said, I don't know what's up. You're not, it's a progressive thing.
Right.
You're not going to get better. In other words, we probably can't grow back what you've lost. But the earlier on that you can get into a full body bed, the better, because we can halt the progression. So we had a guy with Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy, which is kind of like multiple sclerosis of the retina.
Yeah.
And we halted the progression. So he was half blind, knowing that he was going to be fully blind, and we stopped it.
Yeah.
So he's not going to ever regrow get that eyesight back that he's lost, but he's thrilled that he's not going to be totally blind at the same by the same token. Anyhow, I could go on forever about red light therapy. Try it out for yourself. Go to
Yeah,
the website and you'll learn whether we have a location closest to you, and we'll find that for you. If we don't have a
absolutely.
location closest to you, then it's your obligation to find an office that will get one of these so that they can grow their business and you can have regular treatment.
Oh, I got a couple offices in mind, but this
All
was
right.
fantastic. I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
My pleasure. You take care, all right?
This episode is brought to you by Vital Athlete. And listen up, this could make a real difference. I've been using Vital Athlete Freeze Roll On for the last 6 months. I stopped using regular painkillers about 10 years ago because of the negative side effects on your liver and kidneys. Vital Athletes understands this. They've created a CBD roll-on specifically for pain and injury relief. Their Freeze Roll-On gives you fast-acting relief right where you need it, so you can keep going. If you care about getting the most out of every workout, then Vital Athlete is for you.